Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah, assalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa ma'ala amma ba'd. In this lecture, I'd like to talk about the stages of teaching based on the theory of text-based writing proposed by Hammond that we have been discussing under the chapter of competence-based curriculum. When we teach our students writing according to this theory, it is very important for us to help our students through stages that will help them develop to be a competent writer. The first step of the stages is called building knowledge of the field. This step is a very important step in which teachers and students work together to build the background knowledge they need to have in order to be familiar with the text they want to produce at the end of the lesson. In this stage, it is very important for the teacher to introduce the students to what they are going to write. That is by bringing the real world to the class. For example, when the lesson is aimed to help the students by the end to be able to write a recipe of a particular food, then a teacher in this stage, building knowledge of the field, can begin by introducing students to vocabulary items related to food. The teacher can also introduce the students to various kinds of food and also ask students questions in which this is an elicitation question, a question that is asked by the teacher to get to know whether students are familiar with the vocabulary or not. Questions related to food, vocabulary related to food, and also vocabulary related to the specific grammar and vocabulary needed in the text, that is, a procedure text of how to cook a particular food. This stage is very important stage because this stage is a scaffolding stage. The teacher shows media to help the students understand what they are going to do. It can be visual aids, videos, or even a hands-on activity. The teacher can invite students to go out of the class and come to a kitchen, come to a production section of a bakery, for example, or simply to go to the school cafeteria to see how food is processed. This stage is a stage of introducing the students of what the world, the real world, is like related to the text they will produce. This stage, building knowledge of the field, should use adequate time. You don't have to rush to the next stage until you make sure that students are familiar with the topic they will work on, with the vocabulary they will need, with the grammar they have to be familiar with in order to produce the text in question. That is a procedure text about how to cook a particular food. As you are sure that students have been ready to move on to the next stage, then we can move on to the next stage. That is the stage of modeling of text. I repeat, modeling of text. This stage is also very important stage in which a teacher can show to the students the real text they will aim, the real text that they will produce at the end of the lesson. When the teacher shows the example of the text, the teacher also highlights and also shows what the student have to know about the text. What are they? The first one is the generic structure of the text. That is how the text is written. In the English writing tradition, every genre has its own unique generic structure. Each text type has its own arrangement. That is what comes first, what comes next, and how the text ends has a rule in it. In the case of writing a recipe, a teacher can show to the students a real recipe that is an authentic text. By authentic text is meant a text that is not specifically designed for English lesson, but the real text, the real recipe found in everyday life in the real world. Then the teacher can explain how the text is written, that is the generic structure, and also can explain the linguistic features of the text. That is the grammar, that is the vocabulary, that is the style of the writing. Say, for example, a recipe can begin with the title, how to cook what, or sometimes now recipe can come with a very interesting title, something like cooking delicious food in only 10 minutes. Then the recipe will have ingredients and procedure of how to cook the food. The ingredients will contain nouns that are the words which signifies the thing they need, the students need to cook the food. The students needs to be familiar of these words, and if they're not familiar the English words for those words, they are only familiar with the words in Bahasa Indonesia, then they can of course work with the dictionary, look for references to find the equivalence of the words in English. Then the procedure. The procedure typically involves imperative verbs, something like prepare, cut, slice, pour, and then turn on, fry, and so on. In this stage, the students firsthand looked at the type of text they will produce at the end of the lesson. Of course, in delivering the lesson, the teacher can develop creativities to help the students first to understand the text, second to understand how the text is written, and of course to notice the grammatical features and lexicogrammatical features and the generic structure of the text. All right, everyone. So we have gone through two steps. The first one is building knowledge of the field. The second one is modeling of the text. Then comes the third stage, that is joint construction of the text. Joint construction of the text is the core of the lesson in which the teaching and learning reaches its most important step. In this stage, the teacher helps the students to construct the text collaboratively. To put this step into practice in the real classroom, a teacher can do various activities with the students, including exercises to enrich the linguistic skill of the students, in this case, language competence, grammar, vocabulary, mechanics of the writing. Students can be given, for example, an exercise to arrange words into sentences and sentences into a structure that is typically found in a recipe, as we are talking about a text of recipe. The exercise can combine oral exercise, written exercise, and of course, at the end, the goal is a written one. In this stage, the teacher can help students develop their awareness of accuracy in English. Grammar accuracy is very important. It is central to a good quality of writing. So teachers have to be aware that students may not be familiar with the structure, or students even have developed a wrong habit. Instead of saying cook, the student actually write cooking. Meanwhile, we need an imperative verb. That is, imperative is a base form of the verb without any addition. That is, without to, without ing. And the next thing is students need to be aware of how to put punctuation, correct punctuation, how to write correct, for example, uh, capital letters, full stop, comma, semicolon, and also some convention in the writing. For example, the writing of a particular measurement, kilograms or grams or anything like that. All right, everybody. So in this stage, the teacher can prepare various exercises for the students so that the students will have enough exposure to the language they need to prepare uh, a recipe. Yeah? In this case, we are talking about an example of procedure text. This stage can take the most portion in this cycle. Okay, so as the students have been exposed enough to the language, they have done the exercises, then it's time to move on to the last stage of the lesson, that is independent construction of the text. In the independent construction of the text, the teacher gives a task to the students to write the text as they have practiced. In this example, to write a recipe. Now, to make sure that learning takes place, an instruction needs to be detailed because a recipe here in this world is very easy to find. How can we make sure that the students actually write, not only copy? We can, for example, give a video. In this video, for example, the video is taken from a cooking program on the TV, and students observe the video, and at the end of the observation, students write up the recipe based on their observation. That's an example of a creativity a teacher you can use to make sure that learning takes place. A free, non-controlled instruction may be too risky. Say, for example, if you assign your student to write a recipe, then as I said before, there is no control, there is no monitoring to make sure whether the student just copy without any effort to put the language skills, the language competence, the discourse competence they must demonstrate. Then we have to be cautious, we have to be careful in this case. All right, everybody. So in this stage, as the name of the stage suggests, the stage is called independent construction of the text. The students independently construct or write a text. In this case, a recipe. Students share what they have done with the teacher, and it is very important for the teacher to give proper feedback, because the feedback is very important for students' improvement. Feedback is also very important to keep the students motivated. So when giving the feedback, the teacher can, of course, show the strengths, that is the pluses of the work, and suggest things that student can still uh, improve in order to make a better writing. All right, everybody. So let me sum up. In the stages of writing, teaching writing, uh, suggested by Hammond, we have four stages. That is building knowledge of the field, modeling of the text, joint construction of the text, and independent construction of the text. These four stages in this particular lecture can be used for teaching a particular text, that is a genre based writing. And as a plus information, you can also begin this cycle from oral cycle. That is, you proceed from oral to writing. So there are four stages and two cycles. The first cycle is the oral cycle, and then the second cycle is the writing cycle. The idea is that we learn English language from oral language first. As we gain inputs, vocabulary, grammar, and also ways of using the text or ways of saying and writing the text, then we proceed to the writing. I hope this lecture helps you understand the idea of stages in genre based teaching. And of course, I would be happy to discuss about this more later on. Thank you for joining the lecture, everyone, and I'll see you again, inshallah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.